Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
This is Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, and we love that you join us all the time right here at WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College at 90.3 WHPC. And you have been doing that for so many years, but we're not always live in the studio. But today, we actually are right here with you live. And we will take your calls if you decide to call in. The number is 516-572-7440. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are so happy to have right here in studio live as our guest, Dr. Tia Trivisonno. And she is a naturopathic physician. You've heard us talking about naturopathic physicians before, but we haven't had too many right here in the studio with us. And she is a licensed acupuncturist. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want you to tell your story to our listeners and viewers, because we're on Facebook Live. Any of you who want can jump right on there. Why did you become a naturopathic physician?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking me. I became a naturopathic physician because when I was basically in my undergrad, I was studying environmental studies and music and a few different things I was passionate about at the time. My father, unfortunately, was facing some health challenges, and he passed away due to complications of heart issues and kidney disease. At the time when we were visiting different specialists and he was undergoing treatments and some surgeries and using some pharmaceutical medications, I do remember a moment where my mother said to me, "I just wish there was someone who could treat the whole person." I thought to myself, there has to be someone who treats the whole person. And although at the time I was kind of nearing the end of my undergraduate studies, I became incredibly passionate in terms of reading about all the different natural approaches to medicine and what we can do to treat the whole body holistically, to minimize some of the more invasive interventions and to help people with side effects associated with some of the things that they're having to undergo in the conventional medical treatment. So that's where I first learned about naturopathic doctors, and I went to school to become a naturopathic physician, which is what I am now, as well as an acupuncturist, as you mentioned.
And that's something I tell people who are interested in seeing someone who does do natural medicine, because unfortunately, there are like health coaches that are weekend courses, and then people kind of set themselves up as if they are really well trained like you are. So what are some of the naturopathic colleges that really are recognized and board certified?
Yes, so there's a few throughout the United States, and it is important to know the difference, as you mentioned, between someone who goes to an accredited university. I went to the National University of Natural Medicine. That's in Portland, Oregon. There is also Bastyr University in Seattle. We have a school in Arizona. We have another school in California. So there are a few throughout the United States, and there are some websites we can talk about that would actually help people to understand where to go to look for that.
And you are right now in active practice.
I am.
Which is so phenomenal. I actually met you at a lecture I went to, and when you were talking about your life path, for instance, you lived in some indigenous kind of areas after school, which is really what I did also. So I was so fascinated. And so many people I know who used to practice natural medicine are older, like I am. So they're retiring, they're not really available. But you're actually working out of 2 clinics right here on Long Island. Tell us about those locations.
Yes, so I now work in a clinic called Transformational Healing Solutions. That's in Glen in New York. And I'm also in Rejuvenation Health out in East Hampton. And I really, really love working in both of these locations because I think it's a beautiful example of what the best of integrative medicine has to offer. So, for example, in one clinical setting, I am specializing in the gut-brain axis, and so digestive health and how that supports the health of your mood. And I'm working side by side with a holistically minded psychiatrist who is a medical doctor, Dr. Michael Gurovich. And then in another setting, I am working side by side with a biologic dentist. So there it's really fascinating where we look at the approach of why it is that dental health may actually affect your overall physical health and what kinds of things can we do preventively from the dental area to support chronic issues in the body.
So what I call what you're doing, Dr. Tia, I don't call it alternative medicine. I call it good medicine, because every single thing you're talking about is what the literature and evidence-based supports.
Absolutely.
So why isn't it just, shall we say, standard of practice for conventional medicine?
That is such a great question, and we could talk about that for days and weeks on end. You know, there's a number of things that contribute to that issue, one of which is that naturopathic doctors are not licensed in every state in the United States, and we are really hoping for that to change because we need to enter into a new paradigm that embraces what you call good medicine, health care, and not sick care. And so having naturopathic medicine available to people in every state in the United States is one of the first steps, and really embracing the idea that medicine should be cooperative, that the specialties are really important and that there is a time and a place for certain interventions, but we also want to emphasize the lifestyle modifications and the idea that those folks like naturopathic doctors who specialize in prevention and lifestyle modifications to optimize wellness need to have a seat at the table to be working with the best of the other specialties. And when we cooperate, it's with the patient first.
So you are also the president of NYANP, which I was involved with many years ago, along many people here, our listeners know, my co-host and my partner who have written many books together. We gave a big class 2 weeks ago outside. It was completely sold out, where we went and gathered wild medicine and made them into herbs. Everybody took it home by themselves. So he really was very, very instrumental in working with the group because so many states now, naturopathic doctors are licensed. For instance, he is fully licensed right in our neighbor Connecticut.
Absolutely. Yes. And it's now most of the states in the northern New England area, so New York and New Jersey remaining. So
they're the only outliers.
They're the only outliers. They're the only outliers that need to
So you made a lot of progress.
We've made a lot of progress. Yes. Throughout the country, we have made a lot of progress. And in states where naturopathic doctors are licensed as primary care, statistics show that it's more cost effective.
More cost effective, which is great. And how about just the personal health journey?
Absolutely.
Isn't it wonderful? Like some people are just put on 5 medications.
Yes.
But they're not ever taken off.
Correct.
And then 4 of those medications are due to adverse effects from the first medication. So it's really just a hamster wheel. It does not lead to health. Not that we want to eliminate conventional medicine. It's very necessary and appropriate in certain situations, but not for something like, let's say, dealing with a digestive problem. What would you do differently? Because conventional, they're just going to give somebody like Prilosec and then something because of the side effect of that, and not even discuss diet, amazingly enough.
It's incredible how often diet is not discussed when you're looking at a digestive issue. And so one of the things that I think is unique about the naturopathic approach, we call ourselves physicians who listen, that we spend a lot of time listening to the patient. And that means that a typical new patient appointment might be 90 minutes. And that you're going to talk about the person's health history from birth on up to the present day to really understand that what we might call the obstacles to cure, or the root of the imbalance, which is to understand what are some of the things that may have occurred in this person's history that could predispose them to digestive problems. We would also be, of course, looking at any medications they're currently on. We would be discussing the diet and spend a lot of time, not just on nutrition and what's important in terms of the foods they should be eating, but taking a look at where some just gentle and simple modifications or adjustments to what they're doing may reduce inflammation. So we're really spending a lot of time, and then we're using the least invasive methodologies first. So it is things like herbs, vitamins, nutrients, and in some cases, some physical treatments if you're able to do that in order to reduce the discomfort that a patient is feeling. So absolutely, as you mentioned, those medications that can have some side effects, those would not be the first tier treatment.
And they really should never be. I think that the naturopathic process of evaluating each individual differently, if two people even have a digestive issue, that doesn't mean they are going to need the same treatment.
That's absolutely correct, because it could be two different things that are causing it. And I see that every day in my practice. So we know about certain things people may be allergic to, and they're very aware of that. There are other just intolerances or sensitivities to things that may be causing inflammation and pain in a person. And so you have to be a good detective to spend enough time with that person to understand what is the thing that they're eating that is agitating them that may make an incredible change in their overall health. And it doesn't always end up being the thing you may think. You know, of course, you see people with things like a gluten intolerance. I also had one patient where we just had to eliminate banana, and her life changed in a very positive way. For some people, it might be cow's milk, but you're looking at those things and you're working towards, I always like to talk about diet and nutrition from the standpoint of the can-haves more than what you should be avoiding, because I also want people to remember that food is meant to be medicine. It's not about deprivation. It's not about just avoiding everything. It's about enjoying your food, taking the good nutrition in, and just making, as I say, sometimes some very subtle changes, and then certain symptoms that you may have been experiencing for years can disappear very quickly.
Well, you mentioned, too, that you work with a holistic psychiatrist.
Yes.
And you just threw out there something that may be surprising to some, such as the link between digestion and mood.
Yes. Believe it or not, 95% of our serotonin, which is the happy molecule, that's what we call that one, is produced in the gut. So if you're suffering from some gut issues that may have really been occurring since early childhood, you may not be producing enough of the serotonin. We think about neurotransmitters that keep us happy or keep us calm, reduce anxiety, and these kinds of things, particularly coming from the brain, but it's not. It's actually the vast majority of these brain chemicals are produced in the gut. So we want a healthy, happy digestive tract in order to reduce anxiety and depression.
Well, let me just tell our listeners that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. We're right here in the studio. It's so exciting. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse at naturalnurse.com, and my guest is Dr. Tia Trivisonno. Tell us how people can find you beyond today's show. And by the way, this is archived after we do it live, so there'll be links, but tell us how someone could find you if they did want to come to your office or be a student, because I know you do classes, or interact with you on some level.
Sure, absolutely. So we are on Facebook Live at the moment. You can find me on Facebook, Tia Trivisonno. You can find me in the Glen location at the website transformationalhealing.me. You can find me out in East Hampton at the clinical location there, rejuve-health.com. You can also learn a lot more about naturopathic medicine and the organization in New York at nyanp.org.
And we'll talk about that more, but they can also find you on a surfboard or a motorcycle.
Absolutely.
Let me just throw that out in your personal life, because you practice what you preach.
Yes.
And that gives you, an interest in life and a lot of energy.
Yes. I was studying environmental studies in my undergrad, and I do have to say that nature has always been my favorite teacher, and it's from the standpoint of getting out and hiking and getting into the ocean and surfing. I became very passionate about surfing, I would say, just over the last decade, and it is true what they say. It supports the mental health from the standpoint of having to literally go with the flow, and nature in natural naturopathic medicine, we believe in something called the healing power of nature. And nature has a self-cleansing, self-healing, self-regulating mechanism, and so does the human body. So naturopathic doctors are really looking at how to facilitate the body's ability to heal itself. So, it's not with saying we have to come in and we have to take this out or we have to prescribe this. It's about what do we need to do to facilitate the body's ability to heal. And so, yes, I absolutely am passionate about my hobbies, being on a surfboard, being on a motorcycle. These are the things that make me feel good and do contribute to my overall health. And I like to say, too, when I'm working with patients and when I'm teaching, that it is about balance. It is about bringing joy in. It is not about perfection. So the more we make time for self-care and we check in with ourselves and we do the things that we love, it has an absolutely profound effect on our ability to heal.
Well, that's a really great sharing. Tell us about your travels to other countries when you were investigating that.
I know. I loved hearing that we have that in common, because in between my undergraduate studies and going into the naturopathic medical program in Portland, Oregon, I was a Peace Corps volunteer and I was an environmental educator in Paraguay. And it was such a beautiful experience for me and an incredible time in my life, and really instilled in me, I guess, the deep desire to support the environment through helping each individual feel better and healthier. And when I was living there, they have a tradition in South America to drink mate, and there's also a cold version of that drink called tereré, which you are taking an herb and you are actually sometimes taking some local herbs from your garden and mixing those up into the tea. And the local people really knew what every single medicinal benefit of what we would think to just be weeds in the garden to be. So, for example, they're picking one and they're saying this is for your stomach. They're picking another and saying this is for a headache, or it's going to, help you to feel cooler. This one's very good for the lungs. It'll reduce your allergies. And I thought, right there, this is the exact reason why I want to get into this kind of medicine, because we have so much available to us. And the more we know about what food, nutrition, and the herbs that are in our yard can do for our health, that's already a step in the right direction as far as prevention of chronic disease. And of course, now we're living in a time where we have epidemic of chronic disease. So the more we learn, the more we educate ourselves, the more we become empowered to be our own best advocate when it comes to health and healing.
Well, talking about advocates, we will move to a little discussion so we can share with our listeners action they can take as New Yorkers. I mean, I know we have people listening from all over the world, but just for the New Yorkers, I just want to say it's a political issue, because we can get naturopathic medicine as something that's available to everybody, like they have in Connecticut.
Absolutely.
And all throughout New England. My sister, she's a chiropractor, and she goes to a naturopath in Vermont. No big deal. It's widely available. It's
widely available, and we do have doctors that are currently in New York that are working very hard. We have an incredible team at the NYNP working to
what pass is that? What does that stand for?
The NYANP is the New York Association of Naturopathic Physicians, and that website again is nyanp.org.
And you're the president.
I am the president of this organization, and incredibly grateful to all those who came before me who have done all the legwork. We have an incredible team of brilliant doctors working together. All of us have to maintain an active physician's license somewhere. So I, for example, have a license in Connecticut and also an acupuncture license here in the state of New York, which is how I am working with patients. And as I mentioned, collaboratively with different specialties in clinical settings, we would have a lot more naturopathic medicine in the state of New York and a lot of highly trained, incredibly qualified doctors here when this bill passes. So yes, if you go to the nyanp.org, right on the front page underneath the welcome, there is a button that says advocacy, and it is very easy. Just going there, you can actually click the link and a letter will pop up where you're able to write your legislator based on your address. All your proper information will come up, and it is easy to do. It takes less than a minute to support naturopathic naturopathic medicine so that naturopathic doctors will be more available in this state and will have basically a place at the table to do this good medicine you're talking about.
And it's so, in other states where it's available, you can see people very often want to choose, let's say, not to take so many pharmaceuticals.
Correct.
But they're afraid to just stop on their own. And you should be afraid to stop on your own.
Yes.
Because, especially, let's say, with something like psychiatric meds.
Absolutely.
If you stop on your own, it could put you
dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
You need to work with qualified physicians, and you need to know what type of practitioners you're working with. And if you are looking for something outside of perhaps taking a prescription medication, you have to know who to work with, and you need good guidance and support. So, as I mentioned, naturopathic doctors are trained as primary care physicians and can support a person when they're dealing with side effects, and would be trained to know how to support a person if they're able to reduce a medication and how to do so safely.
And which one? Because when you have 5 of them, you can't stop all of them at once.
Absolutely. Exactly. You can't stop them at once. You need to do one at a time. You need to be stable in order to even begin that process, and you need to work with someone who understands prescribing and is able to prescribe. So naturopathic doctors, for example, could work side by side as a team member with the prescribing
in many
physician.
states.
And we do, yes. Yeah. So oftentimes I'll say, speak to your physician about reducing this medication, because now it looks like your cholesterol levels have completely normalized. That's one example. If there is you mentioned Prilosec, so some of the medications that are used that are to block acid, if do have side effects, and if the patient is able to reduce all their digestive symptoms and feel healthy and well, then that's another one they could talk to the prescribing physician about reducing. But again, always with the safety of the clinical supervision and working with the right people. So naturopathic medicine, we are just very eager as doctors to round out the treatment plan in the interest of the patient. So supporting the organization basically means bringing more doctors who are trained in prevention, lifestyle modifications to optimize wellness, and overall health will come here and will be more available to practice.
That's true. And in other states, they're very often the primary care.
Very
people will go there first.
Yep.
They also have their other doctor
of course.
that you need for,
Yep.
whatever. You might need surgery, God forbid, things like that happen. But so much of that can be avoided by healthy living practices.
And I like to look at the model of dentistry. We think about we should be going for cleanings every so often. If you're working with a good naturopathic doctor, essentially you're going in for a wellness visit. You're checking in with your doctor, who again is serving as a facilitator of optimizing your wellness in advance of some more serious condition. I think what we're used to in the country is the model of sick care, which is once things have gotten really bad, that's when you go to the doctor, and it's possible that you may already be on a number of medications or your condition has gotten really severe. And so when you're working with a naturopathic doctor, you're really thinking about, how do I just maintain my health and wellness? And then as things come up, what would be the types of things that need more serious intervention, and what are things that we can prevent just using the diet and nutrition approach, these least invasive modalities first.
Well, that's great advice, and so different from, I find that naturopathic physicians really take time with their patients. Like your visit is probably not 8 minutes.
No, my new patient visit is 90 minutes, and then after that I usually will see patients for an hour or for sometimes 30 minutes. But yes, absolutely, we spend a lot of time with our patients and are staying in close contact and making sure that they are doing better.
And people can come to see you. It's just that it's not going to be as part of their regular medical experience in terms of insurance. But that could change if this law changed.
Absolutely.
Which is another good reason.
Yes.
So that's an important website. It's NYANP, NY like New York, A, N as in Nancy, P as in Peter, .org. And if you go there, Dr. Tia was just showing it to me before we started our show. It's like very easy to navigate because, as these laws go through Congress, the number changes. Like it might be SY whatever, and then next week. So you don't need to know that. And you also don't need to know who your representative is, right?
Nope.
The process puts you to the right people.
Correct. It's so simple. Once you put in your name and your zip code, your basic information, the letter will be sent to the right person. And basically, you're saying that you are supporting legislation of naturopathic medicine in New York, so that, as I mentioned, more doctors will come here and be available to support you in your healthcare journey. And of course, if you want to say something specific, a small testimonial, if you're already working with a naturopathic doctor, or basically a family member or a friend whose life has been transformed by naturopathic medicine, you can share a little bit of your own story there.
Because the legislations may not be totally, So let me just throw out one little question here. I know you work with natural remedies. Mm-hmm. What is one natural remedy that just pops in your head, either vitamin, mineral, or herb, that many people could benefit from?
Oh, hey, my goodness, there are so many, and I love homeopathy.
I do too.
Yes, homeopathy is one of my favorite treatment modalities, and something that I use clinically every day. You've probably seen in the grocery store, perhaps, little arnica pills, which is something that's good for treating bruises and injuries, so you can take it internally.
Arnica. That's
Arnica.
A-R-N-I-C. It is amazing.
It's amazing to know about.
Flashed in my head. My son, who's now 47, on the soccer field, I would not be there without arnica cream.
Exactly.
And this is a long time ago. And any time the kids got, a little twist, even black and blue,
yes,
they would run over to me. Anybody's kid, they'd all come over and I'd put it on there and they'd be back on the field and they'd go, wow, because you could watch the black and blue go away.
You can watch it. And I have exactly sports as you mentioned, I'm doing some interesting things. I'm out on a surfboard, sometimes in bigger waves, and I get knocked around, and I'm constantly using my arnica ointment to put on these bruises. And I've seen amazing things with some of my younger patients with sports injuries, where if they take those pellets immediately, even prior to going in for stitches, you will see the wound heal right before your eyes in a faster way. So things to have in your medicine cabinet.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest today, Dr. Tia.
Oh, thank you for having me.
People can find you right here on Long Island. And thank you so much for joining us again on Herbal Yours, produced right here. Today we're here live in the studio of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamhi, at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbally Yours. Until then, stay healthy.